Hello and welcome to Center Ice Cardcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all things hockey cards. My name is Eric Andrews, also known in the hobby as Hammerhawks, and I'm joined by my co-host and fellow hobbyist Aaron Goldstein, better known throughout the hobby as Crease Collector. So just to start off this episode, kind of similar to last time, I just wanted to show off a pretty big pickup that I recently got in the mail for my PC. I had, in addition to those two from last time, this one that I acquired right around the same time as those two, but this one took a little bit longer to get to me because it was actually coming all the way from Russia, which Aaron definitely has a lot more experience collecting cards that have come from Russia, but I think for me, this is only the second time I've gotten a card from Russia, at least that I can remember. So definitely a little bit more of a kind of a unique deal from that standpoint. But yeah, and obviously because of that, it, like I said, took a little bit longer to arrive than something from the US or Canada normally would. So it definitely took a while. I think it was probably around maybe a month or so for it to get here. But needless to say, the wait was certainly worth it. This is a card that I've kind of just always wanted to get for my collection, but it was never really like a priority. It was kind of just one of those where it was like, this would be a really cool card to have, like if it ever works out to get it one day. And I think, and Aaron, you might know once you see the card, but I think this is actually a card that we have discussed on the podcast before as one that we both thought, is a cool card and will be really cool to own if we were ever fortunate enough. So, and I know that you don't know anything about this card, as is often the case. I like surprising Aaron with my big pickups, which I know drives him crazy, but
It's the worst. It's the worst. Just waiting, trying to guess. And then after that, just nothing, just giving you the cold shoulder until, a podcast happens. And then you share off, all the goodies. So it's always, it's a painful wait.
it makes for better content for you guys listening. So that's why I do it, even though I know it drives me nuts. But so with the context of it, I believe being a card that we have discussed before, and I'll add another hint that you will definitely appreciate this card. Like I know you would gladly take it in your own collection if you had the chance. So with those in mind, feel free to take a shot at what you think it could be.
Man, I'm gonna say maybe I didn't guess this before, but maybe like a sweet Kari Lettinen card, but I don't know, honestly, because that would be kind of like out of left field because I know it's probably been a while since you've added a card of him, but that's going to be my guess because it's a goalie. So that's my best guess as far as what the card could be. Honestly, maybe something low numbered, maybe a 1 of 1. I don't know.
That's an interesting guess. I would not have even thought of that if I was guessing. So it's not Kari Lettinen, but that's a really interesting guess. Yeah, I don't even know when the last time was I got something of him. It's been
Because
a
I know you're
while.
a fan, like you're kind of like a obscure fan in a way.
Hmm.
Not an obscure fan, but like obviously you don't pick up his cards often, but I know you have a couple nice ones. So
Yeah,
that's my guess. So it was worth a shot.
yeah. No, it was a good guess. Yeah, I collected his stuff a little bit more seriously probably like 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. But yeah, kind of just stopped because he just had so many cards that it just wasn't really realistic, for me at that time anyway, to go after, a super collection of his stuff. So I kind of just honed in more on his rookie year stuff. But you are correct in the sense that it is a goalie who was a rookie in 2003-04, if that gives you more of a hint.
I can't guess. I can't. No, like I'll know it as soon as I see it. Maybe Flurry, but honestly, I don't know. Like I don't know. You've been
Well,
picking up like so many good cards of his lately. I mean, could that gravy train really continue? I guess we'll find out.
well, it has. It is, in fact, Mr. 500 Victories.
Mr.
So
500.
to honor our boy Marc-Andre Fleury. And obviously, I made the deal for the card well before he got his 500th win last week. But yeah, like I said, this is a card that I've always wanted. I always just thought was an absolutely spectacular looking card. In my personal opinion, this might be his best looking card from his rookie year. And I actually picked up a different parallel of this card earlier this year, so that might also give you another hint. But without further ado, the big card that I had been waiting for quite a while, is his 2003-04, of course, Topps Pristine Gold Refractor out of 33.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. It's not the one with the grooved edges, is it? I can't really
Yep.
see it. Oh, it
Yep.
is. Okay, sweet. Yeah, that die cut version is so cool. That's awesome. Wow, that's a sweet card. That's probably like, aside from the autographed or memorabilia cards, it's probably one of the best standalone cards of his, I would say, like from 0304. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would
Still
agree.
got to get me one of the originals. They're nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so that actually finished the rainbow of just the basic Topps Pristine card. Every rookie from that year has 3 different versions in that set: the common, the uncommon, and the rare. So each rookie has all 3 of those, and then there are refractors and gold refractors of all 3 of those. So the full rainbow is 9 cards, but I at this point just have the 3 common cards, being the normal rookie out of 11.99, and then of course you guys remember I picked up the refractor out of 4.99 at the National this summer, and now the gold refractor out of 33. So yeah, I love the look of these Topps Pristine cards, especially these gold refractors. I had never owned one of these before, so yeah, being able to find one, and I was able to get it at honestly a pretty good price in my opinion. I got it for 150 US, which in my opinion, that's probably a reasonable price for the card, given it's not a true rookie, it's not there isn't an autograph or memorabilia like Aaron said. It's not produced by Upper Deck, so the value is kind of limited in that regard. But yeah, I figured for 150 US, that was a pretty good buy. And actually, funny enough, there's one ending on eBay pretty much as we are recording this that currently has 2 hours left, and it's already at 240 US. And of course, that doesn't include shipping or tax or any of that. So yeah, I definitely feel like the 150 was a pretty good price for it. And yeah, I mean, pictures really do not do those cards justice. It's really a card you have to see in person, hold in your hands, and just hold it under, direct light, direct sunlight. Even if you just hold it under your phone flashlight, it just makes it pop so much more. I mean, it's nice in natural light like that, but then if you put a flashlight on it,
I kind of like it in natural light more, but I definitely see what you're saying. Definitely pops for sure.
yeah. So it's a spectacular card, definitely one that I was really glad that I was able to find and pick up, especially given how rare it really is all these years later, of a guy who I think at this point unquestionably will be a Hall of Famer. So yeah, that was one that I was definitely extremely excited and happy to pick up for my collection for sure. So that'll do pretty much for my big pickups for at least a little while. As I alluded to on the last episode, I do have a couple of pretty big mail days coming at some point. I don't know when, just because basically I am having to sell a bunch of stuff in order to fund those purchases. So I'm not entirely sure when those will end up coming, but it'll be at some point, hopefully sooner than later. So stay tuned for that. Turning to the main part of the episode today, we did one of these earlier this year, and honestly, we had a lot of fun doing it, and it seems like you guys really enjoyed it as well. So we wanted to do another listener Q&A episode just to see, what you guys were curious about hearing us talk about, if there were any questions you had for us, and just, see what would happen with that. So we posted that on social media and got some questions here. So the first one, this one's kind of a little bit easier of an answer, so I'll just answer this on my own. It comes from Tomcat Sports Cards on Instagram. He asked, kind of jokingly, but kind of serious as well, do we take guest requests for the podcast? It's kind of hard in a way to answer that, because honestly, the answer is it kind of just depends on the circumstances. So yeah, I can't really give a great answer on that. It really just depends kind of on a case-by-case basis. Turning to the next question, and from here on out, we will both answer each question. This one comes from Mike Francis, who is at Caps Cardboard on Twitter. He wanted to know, as insiders, do we know if there are any current plans to start another buying and selling card platform? At least for me, I am not aware of anything that's coming up. In my opinion, and Aaron, I think you would probably agree with this, it kind of seems like forums have been trending downward as far as their popularity over the last couple of years. it really seems like things have kind of more shifted towards social media. So I don't know of any plans for there to be something new. I think, there's certainly room for something like that. It just kind of depends on, how well something like that would be marketed and, how much traction it would gain.
Yeah, I think I would agree. It's very hard, especially with eBay and very dedicated forums and what seems like the new way of doing things, which are Facebook buy and sell groups. I think there's not really a lot of room for a new platform, but I have no idea if this is going to come true or anything. But with Fanatics, people have rumored that they might want to kind of take everything in house and maybe have their own kind of platform for selling. Again, I'm not really sure what this would look like or if it's even true, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. I mean, their licensing doesn't start until I want to say the year after next, maybe even a couple of years after that until they get a full stranglehold on a few of the major sports. So until they start really investing and crafting their own future in this business, it'll be interesting to see, but nothing concrete right now. But it's possible we see something from Fanatics, and they definitely have the capital to back it up. But as of right now, not really. As far as if it's kind of worth it, it's hard because eBay is kind of like the number one selling platform. Whether you like it or not, it's kind of, if you want to sell something, you're going to get the most eyes on eBay. But again, there is that new, I'm going to call it social selling, where back in the day it was forums where people gather in community to, buy and sell cards. What was once forums are now, groups on social media or just, individual social media accounts, just, following people, Instagram, Twitter, what have you. That's kind of like the new version of that. And so whether that evolves from something else into something we haven't seen, who knows? But that's kind of way into the future. But as of right now, no. But I guess we'll have to wait and see with Fanatics. And the next question is from Paul, cardboarded on Twitter. What do you guys think of all the new parallels this year in Allure and OPC Platinum from Upper Deck? He loves the leopard print designs, and the Cosmic is pretty cool too. I think there should be even more like Topps Baseball. Do you agree? I know that Topps has, with autographed and base parallels, I know some of their rainbows could get pretty ridiculous, which people might not agree, but I kind of like that in some ways. So I wouldn't mind it, but you got to be really, really, select when you put this kind of massive rainbow into a product, because I think it could get stale kind of quickly and kind of anchor collectors if that is what you're doing in every product. We've seen it, not this hardcore, but we've seen similar stuff in Allure and OPC Platinum. So I know that some people don't like how they're similar. I mean, OPC Platinum was kind of like the new kid on the block when it comes to like parallel centered products. There was Artifacts, but that was a little different. And so now we have kind of like Allure and OPC Platinum kind of going head to head. So, I mean, I don't mind it. When a new rainbow is up for the taking, it's kind of daunting, but once you complete it, it's kind of cool. So, I mean, in that sense, it's awesome, and I like that. But I know that other people might not. So, I don't know. I think I would like to see it personally, but you got to do it in the right way, not in every product. But that's just me. So it has to be done the right way. And as far as the leopard print designs, I agree. I think they're really cool too. So that's me. And thanks for the good question, Paul.
Yeah, for sure. I think I would agree with a lot of what you said there. To answer his first question about the new parallels in Allure and OPG Platinum, yeah, I think the leopard ones in particular look really cool. I actually had just the standard leopard parallels in hand of Alex Ovechkin that I had for our buddy Josh Packham, who will answer a few of his questions later on today. But yeah, I mean, those just look really nice in person. And I'm sure the pink leopard ones look really nice as well. But yeah, definitely a fan of those. I think those turned out really nicely. And, OPG Platinum, there are a few new ones in there as well. Like Aaron said, the Cosmics are in there, the Aquamarines are in there. There's a few other new ones this year as well. But yeah, some of those definitely look really nice as well. I mean, I think most people would say that pretty much every OPG Platinum parallel looks pretty nice, especially in person. As for the second question, should there be more like there are in some of those crazy Topps baseball rainbows? I wouldn't mind if there was, one product that did that every year. And in my opinion, that's kind of what OPG Platinum is. Like, I think that's kind of what that place is in the hockey card hobby, for that super expansive rainbow. For me personally, Jacob Slavin is in 2020-21 OPG Platinum in the base set. He doesn't have a retro. He doesn't have any autos. He doesn't have any inserts. He's just in the base set. And with his base card and then all of the parallels, I believe there are 18 cards in that rainbow, which, I mean, like, yeah, it's a fun chase, but like, that's kind of insane if you think about it. So I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, it's definitely fun having them all in hand, kind of like what Aaron said. Like, it's really fun if you can complete it, but it really is a pretty daunting task. Thankfully, with a lot of those OPG Platinum parallels, they're not terribly difficult to find. I would say really the only ones that are really tough to find, obviously, would be the Golden Treasure 1/1. And then the Emerald Surge out of 10 can also be a little bit tricky. They're usually doable. I still have to get one from this year. I've only seen one so far, and it sold via Buy It Now pretty much immediately. So I didn't really have a chance at it, unfortunately. But there's 9 more of them out there, so I'm hopeful I can find and acquire one of them. But yeah, everything else outside of those 2 is numbered to 25 or higher. So it's doable for sure. There's just a lot to get. So yeah, I mean, obviously the cards look great. Like I said earlier, there's a lot going on, but I do think that a product like OPG Platinum is the place to do that. Like Aaron said, I would really like to see that just limited to 1 or like maybe 2 products. If they want to do it with a lure as well, even though it is a very similar type of product, okay. But yeah, I mean, if you're starting to have 10, 12, 15, 20 parallels of every single card in every product, like, that's just overkill and ridiculous. And like Aaron said, would kind of just like kill the concept of parallels, I think, and like completing a rainbow, just because like it wouldn't feel special to have all those parallels if every product has 15, 20 parallels. So yeah, I think within moderation, picking the right spot to do it definitely can be good. But yeah, I think it just, you got to be careful with it and not overdo it. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good question and something interesting to think about for sure, especially as we're seeing kind of an increase in the parallels with OPG Platinum and Allure this year specifically, like you mentioned. And then Paul actually had a second question that he thought of after the fact. And he says, do you guys collect, in quotes, any of the digital cards out there now? For example, the Top Skate and Upper Deck E-Pack digital only items. For me, I guess I would say I collect, so to speak, like I'll make sure I get one of like the purple free pack parallels for each of my guys, but that's kind of just like whatever. Like, I don't include those cards on my checklist of my players or anything. It's just like, oh yeah, if I'm gonna be getting them for free, like, why not? I'd rather have one of those, compared to some random player, right? So I'll definitely make sure I get one of those, but I wouldn't say it's like an active thing that like, oh, I have to get one of these, like it's on my checklist. So those are really the only things that I would potentially even consider answering yes to your question for. Anything else, like, absolutely not. Like, I am not really an NFT type of person, not really a digital only type of person. So yeah, I mean, to me, I don't see any value in those cards. So yeah, it's just like, I don't know, just kind of there. So yeah, it's not something I really have any interest in, but obviously there are a lot of people that do have interest in it, given that there is a demand and a market for them.
I'm going to keep my answer like super short. I don't collect any of the digital only cards. It's just something that it's not my thing. I've seen people do it, like Eric alluded to, and that's totally fine. It's not something I have done at all and don't have any plans to. So the next question here comes from our friend, Chris, the massive Luongo collector. And he asked a player collecting related question, which is awesome. For people who player collect, which is us, do you feel less involved in the hobby after your player retires? What are your new goals, maybe another player, etc.? It's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, I haven't went through that where, my main PC guy retires. I mean, I had a small collection of Brodeur and Balfour and stuff like that. And for that, it didn't really affect too much. I got to a place in those collections where, I was happy with whether they were playing or not. So it didn't really bother me too much. As far as the Enroth collection, he might as well have retired. He went over and, after the NHL, he went to play in the KHL, which is, for some people, it's a place that they don't really want to follow their player just because, it's not Upper Deck, it's not NHL cards, which I get. Didn't stop me at all. And I collected his cards over there for a couple of years. And now he's in Sweden again playing. And although they have no cards there, unfortunately, I would definitely collect if there were any there. As far as when he retires in a couple of years, I'm still going to be collecting his cards no matter what. Those old holes on the want list, just, if I find a card I need, him playing or not is not going to factor into my decision. As far as a new player, I've thought about this a lot. We'll see. I have no plans right now to do that, but we'll see what the future holds.
I apologize if during the last question there were audio issues on my end. Aaron discovered that my mic was rubbing against my pullover zipper, so if that caused any audio issues, I apologize. But at least we now know the problem and fixed that. Yeah, obviously, seeing a question like Chris's is one that definitely applies to us to some extent. Like Aaron said, Enroth hasn't been in the NHL for a while, and at this point doesn't have current cards still being made. For me, obviously, Nicholas Hjalmarsson did retire over this past summer. So I am just starting to get into that category myself. Of course, there are still 2020, 21 products coming out. So he might still have some cards coming out here and there. I know he obviously had stuff in Metal Universe and things like that. So there are still cards of his still coming out, even though he is retired at this point. That said, I would kind of anticipate that he probably does not have much of a presence in any 21, 22 products. He might have an odd card here or there, if he's in OPG or something, that's understandable. But yeah, he's probably not going to be in too many products for this coming season. So, with that, obviously, I'm still going to continue collecting his stuff. Like Aaron said, it's really going to, in my opinion, allow me to kind of get caught up on some cards that I just haven't gotten around to picking up. There are some really cheap cards that I just haven't picked up because I didn't think they were worth the price of shipping or whatever. So that'll give me a chance to kind of go back and get some of those and hopefully find some of those more, obscure cards that for whatever reason I just haven't been able to find. It almost kind of seems like since he has retired, there has been a small uptick in his value. Even over the last week or two, I've kind of noticed some of his cards selling for prices that I thought were too high. And if I think the value of a Hjalmarsson card is too high, that kind of says all you need to know, because I really don't believe there's anyone in this world that would value them more than I do. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, it'll definitely allow me to kind of get caught up on collecting some of his cards. And yeah, obviously I'm not going to move the collection or anything like that. As for other players, I obviously do collect a few other players, so I'll just kind of be more so focused on them, I guess. Not that I would necessarily say that they'll overtake Hjalmarsson per se, but just that, still being current active players, with cards still coming out, I think it'll probably be more so that my attention shifts to them, especially Jacob Slavin, as he's really establishing himself as a star player in the league, especially once he presumably plays for the U.S. Olympic team, assuming that the NHL does in fact go, which it sounds still like it's likely at this point, but still quite a way until that happens. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, if they do go, he'll pretty much definitely be on the U.S. Olympic team. So I think that'll even just kind of further his hobby presence, I think. So yeah, it's been exciting seeing him get more cards over the last couple of years. And it's been much more challenging just because he is a fan favorite in Carolina. And there's been a few people that have, made a point of trying to get some of his cards. So I've had a little competition for his stuff, and his stuff is definitely more valuable now than it was in the past. But yeah, obviously kind of eliminating Hjalmarsson, so to speak, in terms of the current cards still coming out, that'll allow me to focus on Slavin a little bit more, which will be nice. Getting back to the aforementioned Josh Packham, he had a few questions for us. The first one, how important is it to build relationships in the hobby? Second one, how do you feel about the switch from forums to Facebook groups for buying and selling, which Aaron did touch on a little bit earlier? And then third, what do you see happening within the next year in the hobby? So all three of those are really good questions. The first one, how important is it to build relationships in the hobby? Honestly, I would say it is essential. Like I wouldn't even say it's a really good thing or, it's nice to do that. Like I would say if you're serious about, this hobby, it is essential. I can't stress how many deals I've made, or how many cards I've acquired just because of friendships that I have with other people in the hobby. I mean, it happens pretty often. So, even just from my own collecting standpoint, it's been, a huge factor of that, but also returning the favor for other people too. If I know, oh, so and so collects, this player, and then I see a really nice card of that player that I know they want, then I can connect them to whoever, owns that card, and they can hopefully get that card for their collection. And I know that happens, somewhat regularly, with guys like Kendall Mullen, who we had on our podcast just about a year ago, who super collects Marc-Andre Fleury. I alert him of various Fleury cards that I see on social media, probably at least once a week, if not more frequently. Even Josh yourself, if I see an interesting Horton or Ovechkin card, I'll let you know about it. Things like that. So I mean, yeah, it's huge, not only for yourself, but also for everyone else in the hobby to have those relationships and kind of be working as a team. I think especially in the hobby landscape right now, it can kind of be, a competitive type of mindset, which, I guess there can be a time and a place for that, but I feel like that just creates more division within the hobby than it does advancing and building up the hobby. So yeah, I think it just makes sense to, be working together and be looking out for other people within the hobby. As for kind of the shift from forums to Facebook groups for doing card deals, yeah, I mean, I would say I have been using Facebook more than card forums for deals for probably about 3.5 years now. And I would say, I don't even know what the percentage would be of deals that I make that are on forums. I mean, I would say this year, maybe like 5%, if that, have been on forums, probably less than that, honestly. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big part of the hobby at this point. I would say if you're not actively involved in Facebook groups, that you're kind of getting left behind in the hobby at this point. Like Aaron was saying, eBay is always kind of the go-to place for buying and selling, but there are still so many cards that are on Facebook that are not on eBay. So yeah, I mean, it's a critical component of being, an active collector at this point in the hobby is, you have to be involved in Facebook groups, and other people would lump in Twitter and Instagram as well. But I would say Facebook is probably really the primary way of doing that, especially when you're looking, comparing it to forums, like how it was kind of the primary method in the past. As far as what I see happening within the next year in the hobby, I would like to think that at some point the madness will kind of tail off a little bit, but who really knows? I mean, there just isn't really a great way of answering that. There is another question coming up later that I'll kind of expand on my thoughts on this a little bit, but I would like to think and hope that we will start seeing a little bit more normalcy in the hobby in 2022, meaning kind of what the hobby used to be prior to COVID. I don't know that it will really get back to that anytime soon, if ever. But yeah, I think things will probably start to settle down a little bit as we go through 22, but really, no one really knows. So those are my answers to those three questions. They're great questions. Aaron, what do you think about those?
I mean, they are great questions, and those are some great answers too. It's kind of hard to follow up that. I mean, I share a lot of your same thoughts as well. As far as relationships in the hobby, I mean, yeah, they're number one. I mean, the same as you, because of those, friendships in the hobby and stuff. I mean, first off, like this is a direct reflection of that. I mean, we started a podcast just, from, interacting with each other online, through forums and stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty cool. But second, I mean, same as you, like I've been in so many scenarios where, collector just sends you a link to something that you need, or has a card that you need, and wants to make something work with you because they know that you collect this particular player or something like that. I mean, if I didn't join any social media stuff like card related or no forums, nothing, I mean, my collection would probably be half of what it is today. And that's not, an exaggeration. Like, just straight up, the cards that I wouldn't have seen on eBay that came into my collection were just a direct result of just knowing people. So I think if you want your collection to be better, make friends. Like that's pretty much it. It seems pretty simple, but making friends, expanding your reach will help out, in a lot of other circumstances too. So especially in the hobby, for sure.
Even with that, I'll follow up too, given a good example, as far as the importance of relationships. I know, going back to that Jonas Enroth Panini Select Auto Tag 101, you were aware of that card, and I think you had tried communicating with the owner
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
And then you stepped in because you actually knew him and had dealt with him prior, I believe. So just because, again, a result of that, who made that deal go through easier, and you guys traded cards as well. So it just made that whole process super smooth. So yeah.
So I mean, could you guys have theoretically worked something out on your own? I mean, I would like to think so, but who really knows? I know he was hesitant to move that card in the first place, but then, me saying, hey, like, this is, he's the right guy for the card, like, let's get something done, kind of pushed that deal through and made sure that it did happen and got into your hands. So yeah, I mean, to me, that's like a perfect example of the importance of relationships in the hobby.
Oh, 100%. No doubt. I mean, that's a perfect example right there. When we do our yearly recap, which I've prepared, it's going to be our last episode of the year, hopefully. If we get it out on time, we're just going to recap what our 2021 was like, and that card is definitely in there. So I meant to talk about it there, but that's a nice little sneak preview for sure. Yeah, as far as Facebook groups and stuff, it's admittedly something I've used, and I picked up some cards through it for sure, but it's definitely something I want to use, more of and post more frequently. And so maybe that'll be one of my goals going into 2022, utilize the groups a little bit more to, again, just expand that reach. And the more people who know what you collect, the better off you'll be. So maybe that'll be some of your goals as well. So as far as the hobby next year, man, that's tough. I mean, there's so many ways you can approach it. From a product standpoint, like what's coming down the pipe, will the demand, keep up with what it was? I'm not really sure. But then again, with COVID getting worse, depending on where you are, will that signal another spike? Honestly, who knows? As far as products coming out, I mean, there's so much supply chain issues right now. Will there be more cancellations? Who knows? It'll affect the collectability, obviously, of these big sets if they're not even around. Aside from the cup, I think the cup will get made. But, other than that, who really knows? So, I mean, a lot of angles to tackle this question on. But like, I could see the hobby still staying strong. I think when it comes to certain cards, key rookie cards, vintage, I think those markets have hit new heights, and I think have hit a new level where I think even if all the demand would leave the hobby, I still think those have reached new heights. As far as anything else, not as much. So it's kind of going to be like a wait and see game on a lot of angles. And unfortunately, we don't have the answers to that yet, or any sort of clear picture, but it's definitely going to be very interesting. Like, those are some great questions. As far as the next one, also a nice question. This is from Al. Al is a huge Agama guy, so always appreciate his his involvement on the show. He just wanted to know if we use Instagram, what we enjoy most about it. Have we used it personally to buy or sell cards, and any hashtags that we want to recommend? No hashtags for me. I love Instagram, but I guess I'm kind of not too old, but like, I don't really search up too much hashtags, but like, I try to use a lot, and that's pretty much it. And for the people who use it, I guess you can hopefully find my stuff, but no hashtags for me. I guess hashtag hockey cards, because, who doesn't like to see hockey cards? But as far as Instagram, I love the platform. I joined it years ago, as far as, my card account. way back in 2014 when there wasn't really much of a hockey card market on there. And it's cool to see the way that it's evolved since then. At first it was more just like kids on there, and everyone was scamming everybody. It was just hilarious. Now it's a little bit more legit. Some big deals going down on there. Not for me, but for other people I know of, and some hard-hitting collectors definitely getting involved on the platform. I enjoy, like, it sounds kind of silly, from a collector standpoint, but I really enjoy amplifying, I guess, my brand as a collector. Just meeting new collectors and just the more people that know about you, the better. I really like using Instagram to highlight certain cards, whether it be a base card or a cool one-of-one. I think just visually, obviously, it's a very visual platform, and sharing my cards on there, in a certain way is always really fun. And meeting a whole new batch of collectors that aren't involved on Facebook or forums, I think is really cool. Like a whole different pocket of collectors, I think, are on these different social platforms. So, learning about the Instagram crowd is always really cool. Do I buy and sell cards? I've bought a few. I've sold a few as well, but primarily I don't. But it's there if you needed to do that. With all this new popularity the hobby has achieved, obviously more people are going to Instagram. So I think it's more of a legitimate avenue. It has been in the past 2 years, I'd say 2-3 years. So if you want to use it for buying and selling, it's available to you. It's a little bit more legit. So it's definitely a great platform. Obviously it's cards, and when you have a platform that revolves around pictures, cards fit really well in that space. So it's a platform that I've enjoyed, and I'm going to continue to enjoy it. So it's been really fun.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think between the two of us, Aaron definitely uses Instagram a lot more for the hobby. I've had my own Instagram account for a number of years at this point, but it's really more just a personal account where I'll like post random like life photos as opposed to just card photos. So I really don't use Instagram for the hobby all that much outside of our podcast account, of course. But yeah, I mean, I really don't use it for deals too often. I've probably made maybe like a handful of transactions on Instagram over the last few years. So it just isn't something I really use all that often. And pretty much the only times that I do is when someone will point out a rare card that I need, to me. They'll just send it to me and say, hey, I saw this card, just so you know, and then I'll go from there. But I really don't use it at all to like scope out cards that I need or anything like that. So any hashtag recommendations, I really don't have any, just because I don't really use it for the hobby much. Like Aaron said, hashtag hockey cards, I'm sure is a good one. I would think, the player's name, of course, could certainly be helpful if you're a player collector. Al, I'm sure that you search hashtag Jerome McGinley, on a daily basis. But yeah, I don't have too much other insight to say about Instagram, just because I really don't use it too much outside of our podcast account. And that's really just kind of more so sharing what we're doing as opposed to trying to make deals. And then Al had another question for us as well. How do you think that Upper Deck's announcement regarding cutting out certain products, with those, if you guys aren't familiar, being 2020-21 Upper Deck Ice and then 21-22 Upper Deck Trilogy, how do you think that cutting out those products will affect our own collecting and then the hobby in general? For me, I don't think that those products being cut for these specific years will be all that impactful for me. I do enjoy picking up Ice rookie cards of, a player here and there. This year, I probably would have picked up the Brandon Hagel Ice Premiers. He's a Blackhawks rookie in 2021 that I really like him as a player. I've really enjoyed watching him with the Blackhawks over the last couple of years. And so I probably would have picked up that card, maybe picked up like the Ice Premiers auto, maybe taken a run at the Ice Premiers auto patch if I could have gotten one for a decent price, but that probably wouldn't have been a huge priority by any means. Trilogy, I'm really not a big Trilogy fan. Like, it's just never been a product that's really spoken to me all that much. Each of my players have had signature pucks inserts over the last few years, but that's pretty much it. Like, I'm just not a huge Trilogy guy. I did really like the Ice Scripts autos back in the day, but those went away last year anyway. So I'm probably not really going to miss 21-22 Trilogy at all. Ice more so. As far as the hobby in general, Obviously there were, collectors that really enjoyed both of those products. I would probably say Ice more so than Trilogy, but there are definitely people that love Trilogy as well. So not having those products obviously will definitely have some sort of impact on the hobby as a whole. Again, I would say more so Ice than Trilogy. People do really enjoy those Ice Premiers rookie cards, the Ice auto patches out of 10 for rookies as well. I would say those are two of the more, somewhat desirable cards for each player's rookie years. That said, I don't know if this has necessarily been announced publicly, but I do know that select cards from these products will be inserted into other products. So I would actually assume that at least to some degree there will be 2020-21 Ice Premiers rookie cards in other products, whether that be the cup or whatever other product it might be. I would expect that there will be Ice Premiers rookies at the very least of the big guys, Lafreniere, Kaprizov, guys like that. I don't really know any much more information other than that, other than, like I said, there will be select cards from those products that will be inserted into other products so that collectors still do have access to those key cards. It won't be the full product, being inserted into other products, obviously, because that just doesn't make sense. But we have seen, probably, I don't know when it was, maybe a decade or so ago, where the Ice Premiers rookie cards actually were inserted into Black Diamond. So, it's going to be a similar type of concept this time around, where those cards will be inserted into other products so that collectors can still get their hands on them. As far as, the future of those two products, at least as it stands right now, the plan is this is a one-off type of thing, and that in 21-22 Ice will be back, and presumably Trilogy will be back in 22-23. So, don't think that just because they were cut this year means that they're gone for good, because that's not the plan. So just wanted to share those little tidbits because I was told that information specifically about those products, and specifically 2021 Ice. So keep an eye out. Those Ice Premiers will be coming at some point. But yeah, as far as affecting us directly, I don't think it probably has too much of an impact.
Yeah, not really for me. Like, I don't collect those products, so it's not something that I it didn't really matter to me. As far as the hobby in general, yeah, I mean, as long as those those bigger cards get pushed out, honestly, I don't think collectors would mind too much. I mean, obviously it sucks if you are a set collector or something like that, but I think as long as those big cards make it into their hands either way, and they get a shot at it, and they know where to hunt for those cards, I think that's really important. So I think in the long term thing, like, I don't think people will really mind it too much, as long as they know where to get their cards. And the next question is from Backhand Sauce on Instagram. I forget his actual name, but that's a cool username. Do you think the release dates will eventually get back on schedule in a year or two? I mean, honestly, who knows? But I would say yes. I mean, if you were to tell me a couple of years ago that this would be happening, I mean, obviously, no one has a crystal ball really. So I would say in a year or two, yes, but who knows?
Yeah. So Backhand Sauce, but his name, by the way, is Ryan. Yeah, it's a good question. It's an important question, right? I mean, I think that's been something that has been on people's minds a lot over the last year or so, as we've seen products getting pushed back significantly. I will tell you that at least the hope and the goal is yes, that they will eventually get back on schedule within the next year or two. By the end of 2022, will everything be back to the good old days, when everything comes out when it's quote unquote supposed to? I don't know. That's probably a little bit soon. I would say, you're probably looking at all of the 21-22 stuff being delayed, at least to some degree. And then that also having some effect on 22-23. But I would say, in my opinion, I don't have any inside information specifically on this. I would anticipate the normalcy really coming back when it comes to like the 23-24 season, just because of the trickle down effect. But I want to say Chris Carlin said this on our podcast the last time he was on, that there is, they are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit, and they are starting to get, a little bit more caught up with their vendors. So they're trending in the right direction, but Obviously there are still some significant issues that are still in the way. So yeah, it's definitely going to take a good amount more time to really get quote unquote back to normal. But yeah, I would be optimistic that we will at least start trending in the right direction over the next year or two for sure. So definitely a good and very important question that Ryan asked there. The next one comes from Larry, who some people might know even better as Lars from Mars on Twitter. That's how I know him, and Aaron knows him as Larry. So when he said, "Oh yeah, Larry asked a question," I was like, "Who's that?" And he said, "Lars from Mars," and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." So he wanted to know, are flippers good or bad for the hobby? I personally can't stand it, but that's just me. That's a really good question as well, and kind of something that we've seen be more prevalent in the hobby over the last couple of years. I guess my thought on it would be, is someone in the hobby purely for that reason? Are they just came into the hobby knowing they can make money, or is this someone that collects but then will also buy stuff and sell stuff to make money to buy cards for their own collection? I think that's kind of where the difference comes in, and where I kind of find, what's appropriate, what's not. I mean, obviously anyone is free to do as they want. There's nothing against, just someone coming in trying to make money. They're more than welcome to do that. That said, I would say someone of that mindset, that's not really healthy for the hobby necessarily, because they're not really putting anything into the hobby. They're just kind of taking from the hobby, if that makes sense. They're looking at what they can get out of it, and they probably don't have much of a connection to the cards that they're buying and selling. And it's more just about the money for them. So I would say that's not really the right mindset to have, especially if all you're doing in the hobby is that. Whereas if you are a legitimate collector in the hobby, and you pick up a card here or there, or even if you just buy a lot of cards with the intention of selling them and then taking that money to turn around and buy cards that you're keeping for your own collection, I don't really see a problem with that, because there is still a hobby oriented goal behind doing it. And I know, even myself, I've done that at times. I'll see a card where it's like, okay, I have literally zero use for this card in my own collection, but I know there is some, degree of value to it. So I'm going to buy it and then flip it down the road, or even just turn around and sell it or trade it quickly, to be able to, then take those funds and use them for my own collection. Not an exact example of buying and then selling, but I was telling Aaron before the show that I recently just acquired, and I posted it on our social media pages, but I acquired the 2003-04 Be a Player Ultimate Memorabilia Rookie Auto out of 100 of Marc-Andre Fleury. And that card came from a guy that we were both familiar with way back in the day on, I believe, Sports Card Forum. His name is Joshua Lee. I can't remember what his username was, but he was really active in the mid 2000s, huge Detroit Red Wings collector. And he had this card, back since it came out. And then he took a very extended break from the hobby, got back into the hobby earlier this year. And he heard, that I was looking for that card and working on 03-04 sets. So he reached out to me and said, like, "Hey man, hope you're doing well. I heard you're looking for this card. Just wanted to let you know, maybe we can work something out." And knowing that he was a Red Wings fan, I said, "Hey, yeah, I definitely need the card. I have an 03-04 Yuri Hoodler Young Guns High Gloss card that I had bought on eBay pretty cheap, probably about a year ago." Again, perfect example of a card where I have zero interest in that card for my own collection. Yeah, it's 03-04, but it wasn't part of my project. So just a totally random card that I bought purely because I got a really good deal on it, and I knew it was worth more than that, and I would be able to use that card in one way or another, either selling it and making some money and then putting that money into my collection, or just by trading it to get something I wanted. So that's what ended up happening, is I ended up trading him that Yuri Hoodler card to get the Fleury card. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's more just, when someone comes into the hobby purely with the mindset of, I just want to make money. I don't really care about cards. I don't care about the people in the hobby. That doesn't matter. I just want to make money. That's a problem, in my opinion, because that's not really, nothing about that is bettering or advancing the hobby. So that's kind of where I stand on the whole flipper debate.
I like that. Like at the end, if you're not coming in here and making it, I guess, a better community, I think then there's no real place for that. And I would agree. I mean, as far as like what a flipper is, I mean, I think we've all done this, whether we have just picked up a card or we just happen to own one of them and we happen to sell it and make some money off it. There's nothing wrong with that. I think every collector has been there at some point. But yeah, if you just come into the hobby just to, who's the best player I can make money on and just do that. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's your decision. It definitely can make for a more, volatile hobby, I think. Yeah, it's just something that maybe it's becoming the more old school way to look at it, but the whole flipper aspect of it just doesn't appeal to me. But I think selling cards has been around forever and there's been no problems with that. But I think it's just all about the mentality of why they're coming into the hobby. I think if it's just to make money and twist someone's arm on a deal or take advantage of people, I think there's no place in any hobby for that. But if it's just straight up selling cards, I don't think that's a problem. So it all depends on what angle they're coming in with. But yeah, like the pure flippers that we just kind of described, I don't really like it. It's not really that genuine, and it just doesn't really make it a nice place. That's for sure. Especially if they have a card that you need and they just want top dollar for it. That sort of stuff's not really that cool. But hey, it is what it is. They're free to do what they want, but it's just personally not my style. The next question is actually a really fun one. We've seen this in the flipper world that we've seen out there in the past 2 years. They'll come in, buy a bunch of cards, some good ones and some maybe not so good ones, grade it and try to make a huge profit on it just because. And so the question comes from Kurt Johnson. Why are people grading everything now, even one of ones? Rookie cards, in my mind, are the only thing that need grading. Only cards where condition matters, in my opinion. So I would kind of agree to a point. I mean, I definitely see what he's saying. And just in that question, I definitely agree. I would think that, more cards other than the rookie card can be graded, but it depends on where your head's at. If it's your personal collection, I think you can grade whatever you want, and that's totally okay. Even, one of one, if you just want to protect it, I think that's fine. But everything else, yeah, it just seems, I guess it goes along with the whole flipper kind of world we're seeing now. They just get a card, whether it be a base card or a rookie card, or just a random 50-year parallel, and just grade it and think, oh, it's a 10, it deserves, $100 or $200. And it's like, that's not really how it works. We're just bugging people, should I get all these cards in my box graded? And it's like, no, I mean, you can if you want, but I mean, if you're just doing that just to make money, you're going to be really disappointed. Because like I would agree, like key rookie cards where condition matters, say a Young Guns where there's been tons printed, and say you only have one of the few handfuls that graded a 10, I think there is some value there. Other than that, it's very hard to, for me to justify a graded card. Other than vintage, I think that's really, another category where whether it be a rookie or not, I think because it's so old, I would definitely see the advantage to grading something. But other than that, not really. And I think the increasing grading, both for rookie cards and both for not, has just kind of tainted it for me. I mean, I wasn't a fan of graded cards to begin with, but just seeing all of them out there, it's kind of becoming like a slab junk wax era kind of thing, and we're going to look back and see all these graded plastic things and just be like, why was that card ever graded? Because I think there's a lot of that going on right now, and it's just personally not my style.
Yeah, I would agree 110%. And Kurt and I were talking about this earlier today after he asked me the question. And I mean, I would say honestly, this grading frenzy is probably one of, if not my biggest pet peeve with the hobby right now. It's just beyond out of control. And one thing I always get a kick out of, in addition to what you were saying, Aaron, like people nonstop being like, should I grade this card? Should I grade this card? I feel like 95% of the time the answer to that question is no. Like I answered that for someone the other day on Facebook. Like I don't even remember what the card was, but it was something, it was just like a random player's high gloss card. And it's like, I mean, you can, but there's really no point in doing that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just the grading frenzy is absolutely out of control. But yeah, one thing that I get a kick out of, like I was saying, is I love when people they're all in on the grading frenzy, but then they whine about how long the turnaround times are to get graded cards back. And it's like, why do you think that it takes a year to get a card back from grading? Because people are submitting literally anything and everything to get graded. Do we need random jersey cards of Martin Havlat and Carey Price getting graded? No, we do not. Them being graded, does that make them worth $100, $200? No, it does not. The point of grading, when it comes down to it, the point of grading is to differentiate a card based on its condition compared to other copies of that card. So, to Kurt's point, grading a 1 of 1, there's literally no point in doing that as far as the actual grading component of it goes. Now, of course, yes, grading a card, helps preserve the condition of the card. There's no debating that. Even people that are against, the concept of grading as far as, the actual numerical grade would certainly agree that the protection component, of getting a card graded, there is some value in that. But like I said, ultimately the point of the numerical component of grading is comparing the condition of one copy of a card to another copy of the same card. So grading rare cards, there really isn't much point doing that. Even if it's out of 5, out of 10, yeah, woohoo, you have a pop 1 BGS 9 of a card number out of 5. Well, why do you think it's a pop 1? Because none of the other 5 copies have been graded. Like there's, like it's just kind of manufactured value. Like there really isn't any added value in doing that. So I always get a kick out of that. And Aaron, I know that I don't know when it was, maybe a year ago, you ran into someone that just they had a booklet card that was like it had a bunch of other players and had Enroth on it, 1 of 1. So I think most people would say the value of a 1 of 1 is the value of the card, regardless of what condition it's in or whatever, because guess what? There's only that one copy of the card. So it's worth what that card is worth. So the guy had the card, gets it graded. It came back like a BGS 9 or something. And purely because of that, thinks that the value of the card has now doubled. And it's like, nope. It's the same exact card. Nothing has changed other than it's in this magazine-sized slab now, which, in my opinion, makes the card less desirable because it's in this almost unstorable hunk of plastic now. Yeah, so that was a funny story from last year that Aaron and I got a good chuckle out of. But
it was fun. It was fun. And especially, in regards to that plastic slab, I mean, you can't put that thing in a binder. It's impossible. So it's always funny hearing that. I think I offered decent value for that
I'm
card.
sure you did.
And they were like, no, because it's graded, I want like double that. And I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks. So that was kind of a funny story there. So yeah, grading everything just doesn't really make too much sense, especially if you're one that really wants to sell it really quick. I mean, for a card like that, you're doing yourself, I think, a disservice in that example.
Yeah. So yeah, and even like when people are debating whether or not to grade something, it's like, okay, at this point in time, you have to understand that it is going to cost like $250 or something to get the card graded. So first of all, is the card raw even worth $250? If it's not, it is nonsensical to grade the card because you are losing money. Second, if it is worth that much, is grading it going to actually increase its worth by at least $250? Because again, if not, you're wasting your money. Third, this more relates to cards that are new releases and stuff like that. But suppose you want to grade a card that just came out. Well, take away whatever the cost of the grading was, the shipping, all of that. Just look at the actual value of the card that is now within the holder. At the time of release, let's say that card sold for $500. And now a year later, a raw copy of that card has dropped in value to $250. Well, now you just spend another $250 to grade it. So now, it's like, yeah, you're selling it and you're just getting, $500 for it. And why didn't you just sell it in the first place for the $500? Because you just wasted a year of your time. So it's just, yeah, there's so many examples of like where grading is just ridiculous and makes no sense at all. And I don't want to just be giving off this totally negative outlook on grading. Some of you guys might remember an episode earlier this year where I got a grading submission back, and there is a time and a place for it. And I think all those cards that I submitted, it made sense. Granted, I will also say when I submitted those cards, it only cost $35 a card to get them graded. Nowadays, it's very difficult, I would say, to justify grading a card right now, just purely because of the price. If it's like a Crosby Young Guns or McDavid Young Guns or a Gretzky rookie card or something, like that makes sense. But outside of cards like that, I think there are very few cards where it really makes any sort of financial sense to get a card graded. But yeah, like those cards that I submitted, they were key rookie cards, like Kurt said, rookie cards of big players and key cards. I submitted 3 Austin Matthews Young Guns. I submitted a McDavid Young Guns. I submitted a Carter Hart Ice Premiers. And then, like what Aaron alluded to, I submitted a Jacob Slavin Young Guns that I purely wanted just for my collection. I'm never moving that card. Like Aaron said, I don't have any problem with, someone wanting to get PC cards graded. That's a different conversation in my opinion. That's just, how do you want to be storing and protecting your cards? That's completely different. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm just really talking about the people, grading stuff with the idea that they will be moving the card. So yeah, I would definitely agree with what Kurt is saying. In my opinion, the only cards that really warrant being graded, regardless of the price or the turnaround time in general, even if you asked me this question 3 years ago, I would give you the same answer. The only cards, in my opinion, that are worthwhile to have graded are rookie cards of bigger name players. Not always, it can be anybody really, but I mean more so key rookies of decent players. Especially a card like a Young Gun where there's literally tens upon tens of thousands of copies of that card. There is value in establishing the condition compared to other copies. Sometimes people might think the jump in value between a BGS 9 and 9.5 is ridiculous. And when you think about it, it kind of is. But like even myself, I have a Matthews Young Gun BGS 9 and I have 3 9.5s. Well, the difference in value as things stand right now today, there's probably like a $200 gap in value. And it's like realistically, the difference between that 9 and 9.5 is very slim, like very slim. So it's a very interesting topic, very interesting conversation. I would definitely agree with what Aaron said. I would say that vintage cards, it makes sense to grade those. I mean, probably anything 60s and earlier, you really can't argue grading a vintage card. It's that at that point, I would say it's more so for really establishing what the condition is, because it's a lot harder with cards like that. And also the preservation factor as well is extremely important, especially the farther back you go in time. So I have zero problem whatsoever with grading vintage cards, probably 60s and earlier. Like I said, grading random 80s base cards, like it probably doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but whatever. There's also plenty of people that would say that 80s is definitely not vintage, people that would say 70s isn't vintage. So yeah, I would say 60s and back for sure, that makes sense. But yeah, just in terms of the more modern era of sports cards, whatever decade or era you want to start that conversation at, I would say it really needs to be a rookie card, a key rookie card of a bigger name player for it to really make sense. There are exceptions here and there. One example I have used before on the podcast is the Connor McDavid exquisite rookie auto shield 1 of 1. Like, yeah, go ahead, get that graded purely just for the, preservation and protection factor. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But, let's say, a cheaper, 1 of 1, like if I graded, whatever, Jacob Slavin Gold PMG from Metal Universe. Like, I guess you could even argue on that card for the protection component because they are condition sensitive, but still, like, there really isn't much point in doing that. So, yeah, I mean, I would say there are very few exceptions to that rule that I use. There are, but very, very few. So, yeah, I always just kind of roll my eyes whenever I see some totally random card being graded, and then roll my eyes a second time when said owner thinks that they are now worth substantially more money just because they're graded, and then roll my eyes even further when it's, like a BCCG 10, and it's like, yeah, that's not really what that means. But yeah, I don't want to just completely rain on the grading parade, because there is a time and a place for it for sure. But yeah, I just feel like the whole grading frenzy has very much so been more so a detriment to the hobby over the last couple of years than it has been a positive for the hobby. So yeah, I think Aaron and I have a pretty similar outlook on that, and I know Kurt and I do, having talked about it earlier today. So yeah, and again, like, if you guys are listening to this and you're like, well, like, I see a lot of value in grading, or disagree with something else that we said earlier in the show, like, that's perfectly fine. Like, we're not saying that these are end all be all answers, that we know better than anyone else. Like, no, that's not true. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. So yeah, don't think that we're delegitimizing other people's opinions or anything like that. It's just based on our experiences in the hobby, and kind of having an understanding for the history of the hobby and kind of what comes along with it. These are kind of where our thoughts come from. So just wanted to establish that there's nothing wrong with disagreeing with us. So and then on to the last question. This is a good one, and I'll preface this by saying we actually kind of, in a way, answered this question, kind of a similar question, not exactly the same question, but a similar question on the Red Light Hockey podcast last week. Aaron and I were invited to guest on that show by one of the co-hosts. His name is Paul. He's a follower of ours on Instagram, and he co-hosts this hockey podcast. They talk about just the sport in general. It's not a devoted hockey card podcast, but he wanted to have us on the show in order to talk about cards. So if you guys are not aware of that podcast or that episode, we would recommend checking it out. We had a really fun time with Paul talking about cards, and yeah, just wanted to throw that little shout out and that plug out there. But back to this question, comes from CHL Collector on Instagram. Again, one of our devoted Instagram followers, which we appreciate. He wanted to know, regardless of sale value, which card in your collection means the most to you? Again, I'll preface by saying the question that was asked on the other podcast was what the most sentimental card was to us. So I would say that kind of the gist of CHL Collector's question is generally the same. So I will give both the answer that I gave on the podcast with Paul, and then also kind of another answer that I think could be a different interpretation of this question, or at least kind of a different angle on it. So my most sentimental card that I answered with on the other podcast was when Derek Whitmore got his first rookie card back in 11-12. It was in Pinnacle. It actually came out in Rookie Anthology, but it was a Pinnacle rookie card, like an update rookie card. Having known Derek for a few years prior to that, leading up to his pro career, and then a few years later, finally making his debut with the Buffalo Sabres in December of 2011, finally him getting a card a few months later was just like the coolest thing. So yeah, I mean, I fondly remember that card coming out. I think it was like maybe early to mid June of 2012 when those came out. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. Like, he finally, like, he's really made it. He has NHL hockey cards. Like, that is so cool. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's like a $1 card, but yeah, it's definitely has a special place in my heart just because of what it meant for me and for him. So that's a meaningful one. But as far as one, just purely as his question reads, which card in your collection means the most to you? When I first read the question, the card that came to my mind was my George Vezina triple memorabilia that Dr. Price made for me, purely because that set and that design is one of my favorites ever. And the fact that I was able to work with Dr. Price to resurrect that design and make that card for my collection, and be able to work with Dr. Price specifically, being one of the kind of forefathers of the hockey memorabilia card, especially vintage memorabilia cards. That experience of having that card made with Dr. Price was just a really meaningful experience for me. Obviously the card itself is spectacular and, is definitely one of my best cards. Just what that process and experience meant to me, was really meaningful and something I'll never forget for sure. So, would I say that is my best card? No. I mean, I would say the Vezina Buckle card is my best card, but, I would say that probably the triple memorabilia, just for what it is and the experience behind it, probably means a little bit more to me. So yeah, that's the card that first came to my mind. But then as far as just like a random cheap sentimental card, probably Derek's Pinnacle rookie card from 10 years ago.
Nice. Like those are definitely some awesome choices. Like I had a tough problem with this question. I mean, like it's so hard to choose like a single card, but I'm gonna have to go with like I think the card I'm talking about, the 2010-11 in the game Between the Pipes. Game used emblem gold 1/1 of Enroth. Reason being, it has the really cool skull and crossbones patch. I think that is so awesome. I remember seeing that card back in the day on eBay. Changed hands a couple times. There was a lot of hype around that card. It didn't, make its way into my collection until, years ago. Unfortunately, I was not the one to pull it or originally own it, but eventually it's made its way to me. Just a cool little card. Again, I just remember the buzz around that card and just seeing it being like, man, that is cool. And then eventually owning it is just, next level, obviously. As far as patches go, I'm really biased, but it's probably like one of the best patch cards I've ever seen. It's just so unique. It's so cool. And it's just amazing that it's in my collection. So it's one that I always come back to as far as like when I'm surveying what card is my favorite. Like I'd probably have to have like multiple favorites for different reasons, but I think as far as one that comes to mind, that's definitely right there at the top. That amazing patch card.
Understandably so. Yeah, that is definitely, and especially, I mean, it's not like we're talking about, a premier mega patch or something where the patch is just huge and you're, therefore able to encapsulate a lot within that patch. I mean, this is a fairly standard sized window and it, perfectly holds that skull and crossbone patch. It's just, yeah, it's such a cool card for sure. Even before we were like really good hobby friends, I remember seeing that card, in your collection in the past and just thinking it was super cool. So yeah, that's a good choice for sure. Two others I actually thought of while you were talking. These would in no way, shape, or form mean anything to really anyone other than myself, but I would also have to throw in those two custom cards of myself that Dr. Price made, a few months ago, the triple memorabilia and the equipped card. Obviously, those are really cool cards to me, but yeah, probably not something that almost anyone else would want in their collection, but that is perfectly okay. They mean a lot to me, but yeah, just figured I would give those kind of an honorable mention for sure. So yeah, that was our last question for this Q&A. I'm sure we'll do another Q&A at some point down the road. These episodes are always really fun. It's really fun hearing what you guys want us to talk about. It's one thing for us to just come up with different hobby topics and things like that, but I think it's really good getting, that feedback from you guys, hearing what you want, being talked about and what's important to you guys, and it is fun, really having to think about what we're talking about because, like I said, it's one thing to just say, hey, Aaron, we're going to, let's talk about this time. We know we have thoughts about this. Let's talk about this, whereas it's a lot more difficult taking questions from you guys and having to answer that. Like, even the question from Larry about, flippers, like, I would say like that's something that I think about from time to time, but like I don't think I would ever have thought about talking about that on the podcast. So, getting that question from him, it's an important topic for sure. So it's good that he asked it so that we could talk about it. So yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of great questions from you guys. I'm sure we will definitely do one of these in the future. I'm sure we'll probably do at least like once a year, maybe twice a year moving forward. We'll see. But yeah, we really enjoyed doing them. And I know that you guys enjoy hearing our thoughts about your questions too. So thank you to everyone that did ask a question. And we hope that you enjoyed our answers. And if you didn't, feel free to reach back out to us and continue the conversation. We'd be happy to do that as well. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for episode 48. We are still hoping to get out a couple more episodes before the new year comes in. We did want to get to 50 episodes by the end of 2021. So we're hopeful that we can do that. So stay tuned for hopefully at least 2 more episodes this year. We'll definitely have at least 1 more for sure, but hopefully 2. So keep an eye out for those, and we'll keep you guys posted on that. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Center Ice Cardcast. We appreciate you guys for listening as always. And with that, please be sure to follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Center Ice Cardcast, and on Twitter at Center Ice CC. Please also be sure to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss a future episode. Until next time on Center Ice Cardcast, keep collecting those hockey cards.